Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to be talking specifically about optimizers, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition optimizers, and what needs to be done with this subsection of the Dungeons & Dragons community in 2021, how we need to manage them and make sure that optimizers are in their right place. All right, let's jump into it. Okay, so let me define my terms. What are D&D 5th edition optimizers? So first of all, when we talk about optimization in tabletop role-playing games, you have theoretical and practical optimization. This is people who optimize Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition characters specifically for the strongest mechanical build, okay? This is almost always centered around damage, DPS, damage per second. It's a term that comes from video games, and it's very significant. It's used a lot in the tabletop role-playing game community because somebody will go, hey, I broke the game. I built this character that puts out 100 points of damage, 200 points of damage, 300 points of damage in a round, right? And they're like, I have the best mechanical build, okay? Now, Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition optimizers, they're a very significant subsection of the Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition community, right? The way you could tell this is Tasha's Cauldron. We just got this new Tasha's Cauldron, and there's just this gigantic influx of Tasha's Cauldron sub-tier lists. What's the most effective subclass in Tasha's, right? And basically, it's a whole bunch of D&D commentators listing and making a hierarchy of D&D's, of Tasha's subclasses. What does the best damage, right, per second, right? And they don't all use that exact terminology, but they're all coming at it from the same perspective. In combat, is your character a beast? Can you do the most, right? Can you? And it can get flipped, right? Like you can be an optimizer for clerics. Who can heal the most? What's the most points that can come out, right? Now, we need to put this subsection of the D&D community in its place. Why do we need to do that? That sounds harsh, right? Well, it is harsh in a little way, but let me explain why it needs to be done, right? Because one of the reasons why is for a long time, D&D, actually for exactly 6 years, D&D 5th edition optimizers have been putting every other player type in their place, right? So there are, I would say, the majority of tables, when you come to the table with a suboptimal build, you need to justify that character for the optimizers. They're like, listen, you got your character built all wrong. You have the wrong heritage chosen. You have the wrong class chosen. You have the wrong background chosen. This is not good, man. We need you to fix this. You need to play this heritage with this class, with this background, and then your damage output's going to be 15 points higher per hit, or your healing capacity is going to be 15 points higher per spell, right? And they don't not apologize for this. They think it's utterly fine that we need a balanced table. Everybody at the table needs to pull their weight so we have an effective working team, right? This is pure nonsense, right? This is a game about narrative, right? Combat is 1/3 of the game in 5th edition. Interaction, exploration, combat. It's literally combat is a minority of the focus of the game, not a majority, right? Interaction and exploration should have more focus than combat. So an optimizer asking people who play suboptimal builds, which happens constantly, it's happened to me many times, right? And I think many of you out there that have the courage to play suboptimal builds often get this nonsense. 1, 2, all of the players at the table making you justify your choices, right? And so they have been putting us in our place for a long time, and now we need to put them in our place. Now, what has triggered this? What has made it to the point where we need to claim the position of no longer should an optimizer feel unashamed to ask someone to adjust their build, right? Which is our current state, right? What has changed? Cody from Taking20s changed, right? He has changed the conversation. He has changed the discussion, right? So Cody from Taking20s has done the best absolute brutal takedown of the Pathfinder system I have ever seen in my life. He shreds that game. He's like, this game, which is focused on combat optimization, is trash, and I'm quitting it, right? He says it a lot nicer than that, puts a whole lot of couching words around it, but he's taking a scimitar to the gut on that game, man. And its entrails are spewed on the ground. It's dead, right? Like, because the reality is, why do you say that matters? What's it matter if a YouTube says that? Cody's got 250,000 subs, right? Cody on Taking20 has 250,000 subs, and wait, guess what? Paizo treats me like a king. They give me lots of product. Their game sucks. I'm not playing it anymore. He says it different, but that's what he's saying, right? Let's not pretend, right? So the reality is, and the reason he's saying that Pathfinder is a trash game, right, is he's saying there's an illusion of choice. There's an illusion of choice, right? And that when you go into this optimization stuff, you end up doing the same thing turn after turn after turn, and you make the game suck, right? So he's saying optimizers make the game suck. And Pathfinder 2 is rich, verdant soil for optimizers. Again, that's my summation of what he's saying. He wants to be nice about it, and that's why he takes an hour and a half and 1,000 words to say Pathfinder sucks, right? And optimizers suck. That's really what he's saying, right? In my opinion. All right. And you could see, like, the moment he said this, first of all, every Pathfinder 2 channel is like, what? Right? Like, and they knew they had to respond because Cody's bigger than everybody, okay? Cody is not bigger than Matthew Mercer, but I don't think there's anybody bigger who is bigger than Cody and Taking20 that isn't Matthew Mercer. Does anybody have 250,000 subs, like, beyond him, that's talking about actual builds and things? Not really, right? So here's the thing. So I'm really excited because I think 2021 can be the year we kill the bugbear of any optimizer being unashamed for asking someone at the table to change their build. And so what 2021 can be is it's the first year in where we can, in the D&D 5th edition community, say as with love and care and with a lot of other words, shut your mouth. You have no right to talk about my suboptimal build. You need to be in your place. And what is the place of an optimizer? They are the worst player at the table. Oh, you read your build on some weird Reddit thread, and now you've wasted 6 months of your life building it at the table? That's great. That's great for you as a player. I'm going to tell you why it's great to have optimizers at your table in a minute. But you had better not bring that ridiculous noise to me, who has a suboptimal build, which is actually far better than your build, because it's me. It's my preferences. It fits a narrative. It tells a story, which is what the game is about. D&D is 3 things. It says it raw, right? Exploration, interaction, combat. If your character is optimized around combat, you're the worst player at the table. The worst. And Cody gives us the freedom to embrace this truth. The freedom to embrace the truth that the optimizers are the worst players in the community. Okay. Now, how do we put them in their place? What is their place, right? First of all, it's not a cruel place, right? We need to realize something, okay? We don't remove optimizers from our games. We don't tell them to leave, right? We have to have them there. We need to preserve them, okay? Optimizer is a state that great players often inhabit in their immature years. Their immature years, D&D 5th edition immature years, right? The best players don't arrive at super awesome suboptimal builders who love narrative and story and are a blessing to all players around them. You don't start that way, right? Unless maybe you're super special. But the 99 players out of 100 are never going to start there, right? You start as somebody who comes into the game and thinks that optimization is useful, right? It's very natural. It takes a long time to understand that a game that does have a lot of focus on combat and the rules, right, and does have a lot of focus on points, like for healing and for damage in the rules, actually isn't about those things. It takes maturity to get there, right? So when we put them in their place is at the table. We don't ask them to leave, right? But we definitely get them to say, hey, you have an optimal build. Great for you. I'm not going to say this to your face, but you're an immature player. You're far worse than me, right? But I need you in this hobby. I need to keep you here until you learn that your optimization is what makes you suck, right? And so that's the issue. You need to get them to a point where they are useful to the hobby. We can't lose them. Our hobby is too small, right? We need to preserve every table at the player. We need to preserve every player at the table. We need to preserve optimizers as players for our future games, right? And so the place for optimizers at your D&D 5th edition table is a place of pity and is a place of stealthy pity and toleration, right? You don't ever say to an optimizer to their face, you suck, right? You believe it, you know it in your heart, you know it in your mind, you know they suck, right? You know that they're gonna, that you know, until they've watched this video or progressed in their maturity, that they're gonna try to get people who have made cool suboptimal builds that have value to make optimal builds that have nothing but DPS, heal, or damage, right? Which is just terrible, right? And, you know, so we need to keep them at the table. We need to preserve them, right? We need to know in our hearts and minds that they suck, but we also need to know in our hearts and minds they have value. They have value to our tables. They have value to our hobby, and we need to preserve them for their future state when they mature past the optimization state, right? So the place in 2021 for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition optimizers is a place of pity and toleration in your heart. You pity them because they're foolish enough to think optimization is useful, right? And you tolerate them because we need them in the hobby and we can't lose a single player. Our entire industry is $100 million a year. It needs to be $1 billion or $10 billion a year. It needs to surpass video games, and we don't get there by alienating players, right? So that's where we need to arrive. That's my opinion. What do you think? Okay, all that is my opinion. But what's your thought? What do you think is the proper place of a D&D 5th edition optimizer? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.